Hi, Amy.
Hey, Queena.
Hi. Hey, Dennis.
I think we're ready to go.
Okay, we're live, right?
Yeah. Hey, Amy, do you want to just go ahead and turn off your camera for now? And then we'll have Queena start and she'll get you guys introduced and come on when we're ready. Is that okay? So Amy, go ahead and turn off your camera. Queena, you're ready to go. I'm going to get out of here.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Queena Wei, and as this year's chair, I wanted to personally welcome each and every one of you to ABA's 8th Annual Women Business Pioneer Symposium. Hopefully you all got a chance to mingle a bit, check out our exhibitor booths. If you didn't get a chance, we will have an opportunity for more networking at the end of the event, probably around 5 o'clock is what we're shooting for. So we definitely encourage you to stick around if time permits. So first off, wanted to thank you all for tuning in and being with us here today. Of course, we would love to have you as our guests in person, hopefully next year, but we're equally ecstatic that we have you dialing in today. Secondly, happy Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. As you know, we have the entire month of May dedicated to celebrating the countless contributions the AAPI community has made to enrich our history. And this year in particular, this event means that much more to us given the recent anti-Asian sentiments that have transpired within the AAPI community. And it's really such a privilege for ABA to be able to host this year's women's event as a tribute to Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And I'm equally honored to be chairing this year's event. So before we get started, we do have a special guest with us today who would like to share a few words on her support of the AAPI community and the Asian Business Association of Los Angeles. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our California State Controller, Betty E.
Hello, I'm California State Controller Betty E. Welcome to the Asian Business Association's 8th Annual Women Business Pioneers Symposium.
Queena, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me now. Sorry about that. They wanted to thank California State Controller Betty E. for, oh, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so wanted to thank California State Controller Betty E. for your ongoing leadership, commitment, and inspiration to the AAPI community, as well as your support of ABA's Women's Symposium. So the women's event is by far my most favorite event of the year. I think it's true for a lot of women that are part of ABA. It was actually 3 years ago that I was invited by a dear friend of mine to attend my first ABA event. She had tried to get me to go to so many events in the past, and with kids and everything, it was just very difficult to try to make time. But so glad I went, and that year happened to be the 5th annual Women's Symposium. I remember it making such a big impact on me personally, not because I was carrying a 15-pound swag bag out the door, but because I left that day feeling humbled, refreshed, and ready to hustle. And a few months later, I decided to join ABA as a board member, and I've been on the Women's Committee consecutively for the last 3 years. Like you, I sat in the audience, listened to the entrepreneurial journeys of 3 remarkable women. I still remember that year so clearly. On the panel, it was Vanessa Du of Health Aid Kombucha, Kelly Nguyen of Dr. Kumo, and Nadia Lee of Collectin. And coincidentally, just so happens that all 3 of these amazing women all served on this year's Women's Committee, planning this event for all of you. And Nadia, whom you'll meet shortly, is also our featured moderator this year. So I'm sure it's going to be really fun for her to switch it up, be on the other side of the panel, asking questions instead of answering them. So I share this story with you all just to show you how much of an impact an event like this has made on so many of us within this community. Each of the women that I just spoke about were not only able to provide inspiration to all of us that day by sharing their entrepreneurial journeys, but they also saw the value and the impact that they can make within an organization like ABA by further giving back to the AAPI business community through the power of influence as leaders of an organization like ABA. So with that said, whether today is your first event with ABA or your 100th, either way, I encourage you to join as an ABA member if you aren't one already, so that we can continue to make an impact within our community together. So this year, I serve as the vice chair for the Asian Business Association of Los Angeles, and am so honored to be on the executive board alongside my fellow board directors. Every signature event hosted by ABA is chaired by a board member and backed by a committee comprised of board members. So I wanted to give everybody a quick shout out to the folks that run ABA behind the scenes. So our board directors, thank you to all of our ABA board directors led by co-chairs James J. and Elizabeth Yang. We also have the support of an awesome advisory council who are also passionate about supplier diversity in the workplace and support ABA throughout our mission and initiatives. And a very special thank you to everyone who serves on ABA's advisory council led by co-chairs Donna Ruff and Aura McCracken-Bird. Over the last few months, the Women's Committee has been working really hard to bring you today's event, so I wanted to take a few minutes to thank everyone on the working committee. Angela Chang, Vanessa Du, Nadia Lee, and Kelly Nguyen. And of course, the team that runs ABA on a daily basis, who you don't get to see most of the time, are ABA staff. There are so many events, so many things that happen behind the scenes with all of our events. So a very special thank you to ABA staff who make sure that we are able to execute all of these events each year. You guys saw Dennis in the beginning. He's our executive director, Dennis Huang of ABA, our program manager, Bianca Sai, and our administrator, V. So the one thing that people still continue to talk about when they walk away from our women's event each year is the swag bag. And the swag bag couldn't have been made possible without our amazing donors. So I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of our donors, which by the way are all 100% AAPI owned businesses, which we're all so proud of, for all the goodies that were gifted this year. Dang Foods, Dr. Kumo, eFavorMart.com, Forenza's Group, Health Aid Kombucha, iLoop Papery, IQ Laser Vision, Jason Wu Beauty, Jelly Pop Shoes and Evolution Design Lab, Kids Dream and LA Face Masks, Collectin and Thought About It, Law Offices of Elizabeth Yang, Latte Beverage America, Way Hair Care, Rael, Tower 28, and last but not least, our proud title sponsor, T-Mobile. And lastly, on behalf of all of ABA, we'd like to thank all of our incredible sponsors that have made this year's annual Women's Symposium possible. This year's Topaz level sponsors, Assemblyman Philip Chen, Aviva Pharmacy, California Water Association, CIT, and Wells Fargo. Our Emerald level sponsor, Southern California Edison, our Ruby level sponsor, US Bank, and finally, our Diamond level sponsor, T-Mobile. And at this time, I'd like to introduce you to Stacy Harwood, the Program Manager for Supplier and Diversity from T-Mobile, for some welcoming remarks.
Congratulations to the of Los Angeles and
Okay, so once again, a big thank you to Stacy and T-Mobile for your continued support and commitment to ABA as our title sponsor for this year's event. So before we move on to our featured event, real quickly before I forget, if you're attending today's event and posting anything at all on social media, please make sure you tag us on Instagram at ABA Los Angeles, hashtag ABA Los Angeles, so that you can help us continue to promote ABA and this women's event within our community. And now, without further ado, would love to get to our main event started. At this time, I'd like to introduce our featured moderator, Nadia Lee. Nadia Lee saw jewelry as a way to bring people together, so she followed her creative passion by launching her company, Nadia Kyber, at the age of 21. The company's initial collection was so successful that her designs soon captured the attention of major fashion buyers around the nation, and the brand quickly became one of the most trend-forward companies in the marketplace. Nadia Kyber has become the premier full-service private label jewelry fulfillment company in the US, providing trend forecasting, brand consultation, design and manufacturing services for stores like Nordstrom's, Macy's, Urban Outfitters, and e-commerce sites like Shopbop and Stitch Fix. After years of research and development, she saw an opportunity to utilize technology to leverage her expertise within the jewelry industry, and together, along with her co-founder, launched Collectin. Collectin is an alternative platform to Amazon for fashion brands, whereby influencers are the sellers on the Collectin platform. And Collectin provides an online infrastructure from sourcing, social engagement, basically everything that an influencer needs to sell products for a seamless shopping experience. Nadia, you're gonna get to meet her in just a few minutes. She herself is an incredible entrepreneur and also hosts a podcast called Girls Influence Power. So I'm sure you can see why she was the perfect fit for moderating today's panel. So it's my privilege today for me to introduce your moderator, co-founder and CEO of Collectin, Ms. Nadia Lee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Queena. It's a pleasure to be back at ABA, to be a moderator this time for the Women's Symposium. And, you know, I'm very honored to be with the company of these amazing women and to be able to introduce them to you. So I'm just going to go right into the program and let's hear these ladies' stories. I'm going to start by just asking the ladies to introduce themselves, a little bit about them and their pathway to get to where they are today. So we'll start with Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Nguyen, and I'm co-founder of Aviva Pharmacy. It's such an honor to be here with all of you to learn and share from your our own experiences. And my journey here was certainly a winding path dotted with steep hills, and some of those hills I chose to climb on my own accord. Instead of taking the easier path after pharmacy school of working for others, I chose to open a specialty pharmacy with my partner Kelly. And when both of our families were very young, our children were very young. So the business became all-consuming, and we had to juggle work, spouses, children. So getting there was certainly required a lot of hard work and sacrifices, and plenty of risk. And that definitely were days when I felt like I couldn't do, handle another day of it. But we marched on, and the journey was very much mine and very much worthwhile. And a big part of this was being able to embrace the curious, open-minded, and resilient mindset of the immigrant mentality. And I feel blessed to have a very strong support ecosystem, one that I continue to nurture and build. So it's such an honor to be here.
All right, and we want to welcome Laura next. Laura Huang.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, hi. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for joining today. I'm Laura. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School. And I have been, for the last decade or so, have been looking at research that examines who's successful in the workplace and in life, and the disparities that lead some people to be more successful than others, the disadvantages, being underestimated. I recently wrote a book called Edge, Turning Adversity into Advantage, which is the culmination of a lot of this research, and started a nonprofit called Project Amplify, which tries to bring some of these tools, tactics, strategies to underserved, underprivileged communities. So looking forward to joining you all and talking more about some of these ideas and all of the sort of wonderful things that that this symposium is trying to bring together. So thanks so much. Turning it back to you, Nadia.
All right, now we have Maggie Churi.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much to Asian Business Association for giving us this platform and allowing us to be here today. My name is Maggie. I am the co-founder and COO of the Asian Hustle Network, where we work to empower and uplift Asian entrepreneurs and professionals globally. And we really started this organization and this community because we understood that Asians are often underrepresented in many different industries and areas. And historically, we've always had this generational limiting belief that we have to keep our heads down, stay quiet, work hard. But we really want to kind of tackle that mindset and allow Asians in our community to use their voices, to speak up, to be loud, and share a lot about their entrepreneurial journeys, share experiences about them finding their Asian identity. And in the past year and a half, we've built our community to over 100,000 members across all social media platforms. It's just been really inspiring to see all the connections being made in the community. But yeah, really excited to be here, and thank you so much for giving us the space.
Thank you, ladies. So I think it would be great for all the women in the audience to kind of walk away with some insights on every lady here, your journey as women leaders. So I know with Laura's book, Edge, it provides a great lead off for this conversation. Laura, can you tell us a little bit about your book? What is Edge, and that what brought you the success that you have today?
Hi, thanks, Nadia. Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of success, the funny thing is that actually in terms of success, even though I am a professor at Harvard, I was actually rejected from Harvard 3 times. So, you know, success is sort of this funny this funny aspect where I do talk about how do we define success? How do we define meaning for ourselves? How do we define fulfillment, and what does that all mean? And the origins of this book was really that you know, from a really young age, we are taught that success is about hard work. And our you know, our parents teach this to us as from as young children. We're taught, like, put your head down and just work hard, you know, put in twice the amount of hard work, even if it's for half the amount of benefits, and you'll see this sort of progress. And nowadays we have such a love affair with things like hard work and grit and perseverance. And the thing is, I would never say that things like hard work and grit are not critical. They are absolutely critical. But yet deep down, we sort of also often get frustrated because we put in that hard work, and that hard work doesn't always pay off. That you can take 2 different people who work equally as hard, and one will be ultimately more successful than the other. And why is that? It's because so much of success and outcomes are not determined just by hard work. They're also determined by perceptions and subtle signals and cues and stereotypes that exist out there. And so what I've done in the last couple of years in terms of my research and in terms of what went into this book is understanding these perceptions and signals and stereotypes. And even more so than that, is understanding how we can take these stereotypes that exist and flip them in our favor. How can we take these negative sort of things that people bestow upon us, adversity, constraints, bias, stereotypes, and actually redirect them and flip them in our favor so that we can ultimately gain an advantage or discover our own edge. And that's why the title of my book is Edge, and I present the framework, the edge framework that I've developed over the last, you know, decade or so of my research. And so the last thing I'll kind of end with here is that, you know, we can all do this. You know, we can all have our unique edge. We can be authentic. We can redirect people to who we authentically are. There are ways for us to empower ourselves, even within this framing, within this context where we know that it's sort of an imperfect world, that there is this myth of meritocracy. So thanks so much. Again, it's great. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, we're going to turn over to Maggie. So Maggie, you co-founded the Asian Hustle Network. What was your personal edge that led to its successful community?
Thanks, Nadia. That is a great question. And thank you so much for asking. And really love how Laura kind of set the tone for this panel discussion and her explanation of what edge is. And, you know, I had the opportunity to learn more from Laura about what edge is in terms of, you know, enriching, delighting, guiding, and the, you know, concept of effort and hard work. And so I would say my personal edge that led to, you know, the successful creation in terms of like enriching, I really had to understand, you know, what my strengths and weaknesses were and who I was, right? And so some of you guys may know Brian Pham, who is the founder of Asian Hustle Network and my business partner. He is really good at, you know, connecting with people right off the bat and creating partnerships. Whereas I'm better at, you know, on the operational side, making sure our day-to-day is and making sure, you know, we're okay for the day, for the time being. And so in terms of delighting, you know, meeting so many entrepreneurs and successful leaders within Asian Hustle Network, I would sometimes be pretty self-conscious because, you know, I was worried about how reputable people thought that I was. I didn't, you know, personally didn't go to the best college. And especially in Asian culture, Asian people look at those type of things, right? And so I constantly thought about this, but I really had to form opportunities and create opportunities for myself to give myself these chances and to show like, how can I enrich and provide value, right? And there is a lot you can do with a community, and I wanted everyone in the community to win. And I personally did believe that, you know, everyone can have a piece of that pie. I think especially in Asian culture, we tend to think like if one person wins, the other person has to lose and vice versa, which is not true at all. and I really wanted to kind of like tackle this mindset and make people believe and know that everyone has a chance to succeed, right? And that was really the purpose of Asian Hustle Network. And there is no point in a community if only one person wins, And so I constantly wanted to ask people, like, how can I support you? Is there any way that I can support you and help you in any way? In terms of like guiding, I wanted everyone to understand that even if you don't have a lot of fancy accolades, like myself, like I personally didn't have a lot of fancy accolades. Maybe you didn't even graduate college. You can still create opportunities for yourself and guide those perceptions that other people have of you. And so that's why I continually work with my team to give back to the community that we serve, because I truly did want to see everyone in the community succeed, and to have them say like AHN was part of the reason of their success was extremely rewarding. And then in terms of effort and hard work, and I'm like basing all of these acronyms based on Laura's EDGE. So I really appreciate Laura just like educating us on what EDGE is. People often forget that community does not run by itself. And so when we were starting out, every now and then, we would get comments like, oh, how hard is it to manage a Facebook group? It can't be that hard, right? And so we put in a lot of time and effort, and it kind of is disheartening when people say that, and a community, I believe, is oftentimes a reflection of how involved and present the community leader is. And if you don't put in the TLC into managing it and nurturing, it's not going to survive. So those are just some of the ways that, we were able to make sure that, AHN was successful after its creation. And it's been great ever since.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay. Oh, here I am again. Okay, Amy, now you're next. Now you're wildly successful in the pharmaceutical industry. So what was your edge to making like a repeated success in your industry?
Hi. Thank you for your question, Nadia. And well, I'm not declaring victory yet. Repeat success can be as challenging, if not more challenging, than the initial success. It's never the same challenges, and you have to have agility to tackle the ever-changing business environment, and that's what I'm experiencing right now with my current business. And Laura's book, Edge, I've learned so much, and I resonate with what she wrote, and as well as with what Maggie just expressed, is us having to find opportunities and create values for others. I think most of us has a recipe for success, and perhaps agree on the basic ingredients of the hard work, passion, grit, and competencies. For me, my edge has been about the human connections. I believe human connection is really the heartbeat of any business and most relationship. And I think that many business exchanges are often so matter of fact and transactional. But I think that when we come to and connect with others and show a genuine interest in them as a person, their story, their narrative, and being more focused about the person you're interacting and the value you can bring rather than what they can bring to you, I think that can be very powerful. And in my personal life and business journey, that has brought a lot of rewarding connections and relationship. And I think most people tend to make decisions based on how relatable someone is and how well they like that person, more so than sometimes more than their capability or competency. And I think that amplifying that human side could be very simple. It could just mean showing gratitude or small gifts of gesture of appreciation, and also just to show up and genuinely care. And I have to say that that has been a winning formula for me, at least, to have that edge.
Thank you, Amy. Can I bring all the speakers back? Can you turn on your camera so we can have the whole panel here? Laura? Maggie? Yep. All right. Okay. Okay, so now we're all together. So I have a question for every one of you. So now we all have double strikes. We're both we're women, we're Asian. Is there a moment in time where you feel like you really had to overcome all these stereotypes or confront the biases that being an Asian woman is, either in work or in personal? Can you share with us? We'll start with Maggie.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Nadia. If I had to pinpoint one specific moment, I don't think I could do that, but I think it's just a collection of my experiences all together. In starting Asian Hustle Network, obviously Brian was alongside with me. And, oftentimes I did feel like people would often go to Brian first rather than myself, right? It could have just been, my self-conscious mind thinking that, or it did seem like people would rather go to him first, and it kind of did make me feel in the background, right? But I really had to kind of get out of my shell and realize that, I do have a platform and I do have a community where I can fulfill my duty to be a good influence, because if I don't believe in myself, then others will not either, right? And I won't be able to run a community if others are not going to believe in me. And so, personally speaking, it could also be the reason because I'm, actually a very shy and timid person to begin with. And this is just how I grew up. I was always very shy. I never really spoke up. But after starting Asian Hustle Network, I really had to kind of get out of my shell and get out of this hole I was in, and challenge myself and put myself in uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable positions to, actually speak up more often. During those moments of perseverance and telling myself okay, I have to do this, and this to, be on the same level, either be on the same level as Brian or make myself appear, at the same level as Brian or higher, right? And I think that's what a lot of women, personally go through in terms of just being in a workplace full of, usually white, male, Caucasian, in a room full of them. And I personally dealt in the corporate world, and I was the only, Asian female. And oftentimes I felt like I was speaking up, but no one was listening, right? And sometimes I did have to feel like I had to do even more to kind of put myself on a pedestal. But I think that throughout those, all those experiences and overcoming those stereotypes, I really did have to just kind of get out of my shell and challenge myself.
All right. Well, what about you, Amy? Some stories to share with us? Oh, I think you might be stuck. Okay, we'll move on to Laura first. We'll be back with Amy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, my gosh, there's more stories than I probably, the thing is that we all have so many of these stories, right? We all have, it comes in different shapes and sizes, but we've all experienced bias. We've all experienced implicit bias. We've all experienced explicit bias. We've all experienced microaggressions. And there's this whole continuum of things that we've experienced, and maybe it's been in different contexts with different people, but there is, I often talk about how life rhymes, right? That we have these experiences in our life that rhyme, and our lives also rhyme with other people who look like us, other Asian Americans, other Asian female Asian Americans, other women. We have these experiences. And so part of building a community is both around recognizing that we have these shared experiences, but that we also have these individual experiences that might look differently, that might, come off differently. And, I'll sort of give a really quick example. You guys have shown me so much love here already. I'm already feeling, just from the chat here, thank you guys. So I want to share a little bit of love with all of you as well. I want to give you a couple of tips, things that have sort of helped me. One of the things I recognized was that in the corporate world, that I didn't have access to the same sort of people that others had, right? That others had access to the VPs or the senior level management, but there was something around me being a young Asian woman that I didn't have the sort of I didn't attract the same attention, or people weren't going to notice things, that there was all of these different pieces. And so, you know, I talk about how one thing that we can all do is recognize that when we might not have access to the person, like we're all going after, oh, wow, this person's really successful. They're the president of the company. They're the VP of the company. They've achieved all of these things. And they might not be giving out time, resources, money, anything in the same, you know, equally. But what I realized is that sometimes those people are actually not as helpful. It's like, if I wanted to learn, it's like, for example, let's say I wanted to learn how to play tennis. And Roger Federer was like, okay, I'm going to play tennis with you. I'm going to coach you. Well, even if I would be like, yay, I've got Roger Federer who's helping me. But at the same time, Roger Federer would play tennis with me and he would be lobbing ace after ace after ace at me. And I wouldn't actually learn anything. But instead, if I play tennis with someone who's like one level above me or two levels above me, they understand things that I'm struggling with. They understand the things that I'm trying to learn. And we can do this in organizations as well. This can be one of those hidden advantages where everyone's sort of going after those senior level managers as mentors, but there are so many people who are willing to mentor us, champion us, advise us, that might just be one or two levels above us, that have gone through what we've gone through, still understand it, still are able to remember it and talk about it. So that's sort of one way that we can kind of do this and still be able to face these adversities, these biases, these implicit things that we face.
That's a really good point. Thanks for that tip, Laura. Okay, we're gonna go back to you, Amy.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay. I hear Maggie and I hear Laura, and I know that stereotypes exist for Asian and women. But personally, I haven't felt that this is a disadvantage. In fact, I feel rather than seeing being Asian women as a disadvantage, I see these parts of my identity as assets, actually. I carry my femininity and my beautiful Vietnamese heritage with pride. When I interact with people, I bring those sides out because I think we all have value that we can add to any kind of relationship, whether it's at work or outside. And we have to find ways to magnify those positive aspects of being a woman, of being Asian, and share that with other people who have yet to appreciate those assets. And I feel like I do worry that women, we feel like we have to overcompensate or toughen up to be seen as more assertive or competent, but it's not necessarily men are so to, or just people in general in a certain context. And so when we go out of context, and even though we're trying to show assertiveness, it might be viewed as aggressive, and that could be a backlash against us. And so I feel like, you know, sometimes seeing that being in a room where men can be very and assertive with one another, it could be refreshing to have a calm, quietly assertive voice of a woman in the mix, right? And sometimes I could go to a meeting with, and I would bring out the Asian in me, the Vietnamese in me, and I might do something nice, like ask if I can scoop, you know, food on their plate, and that could be seen as something different. But I feel like we have to be careful not to view our the biases that are natural and inherent in how everyone walk around seeing different people as something negative, and I like to magnify the positive.
I like that. I totally agree with that. I mean, right now there's a super hyper focus on women, and then especially this month, right, or the last couple months, Asians in general. Now, do you feel like, ladies, do you think this is the beginning of some big changes to come, or is it more like the topic of the moment, and, you know, status quo will be, you know, the way it is coming in the future? Amy, you want to take a stab at it first?
Yeah, I think that most for forward-thinking executives and corporation know that diversity and inclusivity imperative to the growth and success of their company. First and foremost, diversity will enrich and deepen the wealth of a company, because diverse perspective, viewpoints, background can increase the creativity of a company and growth. And it also helps their customers or clients view them and become more relatable to the fact that their company have a diverse mix of people. It's a win-win for everyone when a company is more inclusive and diverse. The critical thing right now is that this is a transitional period where companies are making room for more minorities and women, and it's a good time to take advantage of this opportunity. It's critical that when given this opportunity is how we show up, right? Do we reaffirm their biases that we're less capable? Can we change the stereotypes and impress them with the value we bring to the table, and ultimately reshape these biases? And it's going to take time, and it's not going to be something that will occur overnight, but I think that progress will come, and each of us on our part too, we have to take time and see what are our biases. Do we have biases that prevent us from becoming successful? And those are important things that I think we need to think about as well. It's not other people's biases that affect us, it's sometimes our own as well.
What do you think, Laura?
I'm really encouraged by the sorts of conversations that I've been seeing recently. I mean, in a lot of ways, it brings more language and understanding to things that so many of us have felt but haven't been able to articulate. I think there's just things around these conversations around being a model minority or being invisible, or the types of expectations that are placed upon us. So I think the more that we can have these conversations, and that it becomes a part of like our normal vernacular, where it's not these sort of hidden things that we feel, the more that we're going to be able to continue to make progress. I think the other way that we're going to continue doing this is by doing more of what I sort of alluded to before, which is building community. Building community in ways that we may not only need, but also in ways that we're not even sure that we need yet later. And part of the trickiness of this is that we are so different, and there is these aspects of, like, we understand the overall Asian American plight, but yet when we look at individual different, the sort of issues that Japanese Americans are facing, Korean Americans are facing, Chinese Americans are facing, and so on and so forth. I think we also need to remember that there are different ways to build this community. And so just like, for example, if we're going to war, right, you're going to need some people that are on the front lines. You need the people who are sort of on the front lines fighting, but you also need people who are the meteorologists checking the weather. You need the people who are rationing, the people who are, supporting from behind the scenes. And the one thing that I think we can do to continue pushing this forward is to enable that and to embrace that, where not everyone has to be on the front lines. The ones that are people that are verbal, the people who are fighting, the people who are doing this, so when we can embrace that, and embrace that there's lots of different ways, because not everyone's going to be feeling comfortable to be on the front lines. Not everyone's going to be able to be verbal, able to do the sort of on the ground things. That's when we're going to be able to make progress and continue this. And so to your question of, can we keep extending this? Is this a short-term thing? I think we can extend this, and we can make this a long-term thing, as long as we understand all of the nuances and understand that we need to be able to account for all of these different factors.
Right. Maggie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Amy and Laura. I think they both bring up really great points. obviously we are still going to experience, hardships and struggles within the Asian community, as well as, being a woman. But I do believe that, this is the start of something big. And on the women's side, just to give some statistics, I think in the last year, there was like less than 3% of venture capital funding going to women-led companies. But I do see there are definitely more and more programs, specifically to help women entrepreneurs, and just events like these, to empower more women business. And like Amy said, like we just have to look for those opportunities. I think a lot of those times we don't even pay attention to those opportunities, and we really have to do our part in looking for those opportunities for ourselves as well. I think on the Asian side, we're definitely getting more media coverage, and based on everything that's been happening in the last year and all the unfortunate events within the Asian community. But we've definitely been more vocal, and we've been like demanding for more representation. We've definitely been speaking up when historically we've been seen as like quiet and docile and weak, right? I feel like over the last year and a half, we've really been forced to look deeper to our cultural heritage and just learning more about our heritage, who we are, where we come from, and recognizing that although our cultural differences are unique, it's also important that we come together as a collective and stand in solidarity, right? So I do believe, yeah, to answer your question, I do believe this is the start of something big, but we have to continually work on it and see that, understand that it really is going to take all of us to make a difference.
Right. I think as standing together as a community, also just communicating and just being there with an open mind, I think really helps. So I know, everyone has probably been talking about this. The last year and a half, it's major disruption because of the pandemic. Now, the three of you are all in very diverse fields of education, community, and business. So what have you witnessed throughout the year in terms of the pros and cons from this experience? Amy, you want to take a stab at it?
What came out of the pandemic, the con personally for my business and from our company was that we saw half of our revenue. I mean, we lost half of the revenue. Basically, our business declined, and it was very painful. And then when the rioters and the protests came, our pharmacy got looted, and it was a double whammy for us, and it was a little heartbreaking. But you know what? What I observed was that our employees were very resilient and they were supportive. And instead of us dwelling on the negative of what's going on here, for us personally, we found resilience and start thinking about what we can do for other people. Like, this is a pandemic, how can we help? So instead of thinking about ourselves, we began to search for our care. And one of the things we did was we connected with our community, and our pharmacy was one of the first few to actively seek out and obtain the vaccines. And outside of the city-run clinic, we became one of the businesses with a really large vaccination site. And up to date, we have provided over 12,000 vaccines. And that really invigorated and energized and motivated our team. And it reaffirmed, what I've experienced in the past. In every adversity, there's an opportunity to grow and to thrive and to become even bigger than you were before. And it's a matter of how you choose to look at the adversity that comes before you. And so I feel like the same thing can be extended to our community at large. From this adversity, I think people begin to look a little harder and race and how we treat each other, right? And if this didn't happen, maybe and treat everyone with certain, lack have been doing, and the changes wouldn't have come. So I feel like the moral of all this is that we should in challenges in our lives, and instead of dwell on the negative and feel like victims.
I mean, definitely the pandemic has impacted so many people in so many levels. What about you, Maggie? What do you think? How has that impacted you?
You know, in terms of, you know, building Asian Hustle Network, you know, it sounds a little bit bad to say this, but I think that Asian Hustle Network came at a really interesting time and a perfect time, just because it happened right before the pandemic. And I was able to see so many different changes with the Asian community. And a lot of them were business owners, you know, and so we focused on Asian entrepreneurs and professionals. And I would say, you know, Asian Hustle Network grew substantially during the pandemic. I think people were looking for a community to turn to, just asking about, you know, anything from how do I pivot my business? How do I make sure my business stays open? How do I get a PPP? And, you know, I've seen, in terms of the business side, I've seen so many business owners being super like scrappy with their ideas and pivoting their businesses. And just to kind of give you an example, this one person owns a boba shop in Los Angeles, and he said he was going to go out of business because he wasn't getting any revenue. He wasn't able to pay his investors. He wasn't able to pay rent or his employees, but he had to pivot and think of a new way to sell his products. And he made this boba kit where he sold it online, promoted it on Asian Hustle Network. He sold out in like 2 days. And those are just like one of the things that I saw in Asian Hustle Network, where it kind of like gave me a lot of faith, because, you know, he was almost, you know, so close to closing down his business, and he was able to think of something on the quick like that, and being able to like, you know, share it with our network. And now he's doing fine. He's about to open up his shop again now that nearing the end of the pandemic. But in terms of like the racism side, I've definitely seen a lot. Well, you know, obviously there was fear to begin with. There were a lot of people who were feeling afraid. You know, there were 6,600 reported anti-Asian hate crimes in the last year, and a 169% surge in the first quarter of 2021. But the more we understood what was happening, for better or for worse, one thing for sure is that it really brought us together and more united as a community, right? And obviously I wish that it happened under different circumstances, but there was some good. Were hosting rallies. People were donating to GoFundMe links of the victims or the victims' families that were attacked, to grassroots organizations that are really on the ground doing the work to help keep our neighborhoods safe, supporting small businesses that were affected financially or were vandalized due to racism. And then people were like reporting on these incidents on Stop AAPI Hate, right? And we always say, like, if you see something, say something. And we've definitely been seeing a lot of change. More, and then in turn, we started getting more media coverage for the Asian community, which is something that we had lacked a lot before. And, you know, just been speaking up when historically we've always been very quiet, or people saw us as quiet, right? And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, a really big change is just us learning more about our Asian identity, learning more about our cultural heritage, and recognizing that, you know, we have to come together as a community.
Definitely. Laura?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot to add to what Amy and Maggie have articulated so beautifully. I mean, I think all of that really makes a lot of, I mean, all of that in terms of how we've taken adversity and tried to make it into opportunities. So I think it's obviously been devastating for so many of us. It's been really a really hard year. And I think it's the more we can remember the ways in which it's made us more empathetic towards the fact that people have faced this adversity and these challenges in so many different ways, including not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in lots of different ways. So yeah, just echoing what the Maggie and Amy have already said.
And okay, so something to add, like Amy, so for someone, you have such a rich experience of scaling your business to tremendous levels. Now, what's your view on what the future will be like after the pandemic?
I'm not the most qualified person to answer this, because our business depends on, you know, everyone showing up to work in person, physically in person. But I think that we've heard or read about a permanent shift in the desire for remote work, and most companies will allow a hybrid model. But in many cases, I feel that remote work will decrease the collective creativity and growth. Just my personal opinion. If given a choice, I think individuals seeking to grow with the company time work. There are many studies that shows that people who show up and go to work are seen as more ambitious than those who prefer to stay home, and they're more likely to get promoted and get the raises. So I know it's hard for people with family, but I think that, you know, it's important to spend time at home with families, but truly half the battle is showing up, and physical presence creates camaraderie, builds trust, and strengthens the fabric of a company. So that's just my thought.
No, definitely. I mean, I never knew how much I missed coming to the office until you couldn't be back at the office. I think you're right. I mean, I think after the pandemic, there will be definitely, you know, some sorts of a shuffling and a hybrid situation in terms of the future of work. Laura, what do you think is the future of education from this experience coming out of the pandemic?
Well, you know, I mean, I think we had this very natural experiment to show that all of the sort of steps that we were taking towards virtual learning is not quite what we thought it was going to be. I find it fascinating that prior to this, there was a huge focus on ed tech and how we were going to be able to move learning much more remote, and how there were going to be all of these new innovations around it. I think we've really rethought that. During this past year, my students have just been craving in-person education. They've been craving wanting to be in the classroom, getting to engage with their classmates, wanting to learn in all of these traditional sort of ways. And so I think it'll really change the way we think about what types of education we can do in a remote online sort of setting, what types of education we still need in the classroom, what that means in terms of what we're learning and the type of things that we're learning. So I think it's really changed and shifted the way that we think about education, both for the good and for the bad. It also changes how we envision what traditional universities, what the role is, and what they sort of provide. Yeah, so it's just been really eye-opening in lots of different ways. I feel for my students. I really feel for them. I mean, it's such a hard environment from which to learn from, especially the first year students, the ones that are just coming in, that don't even really have a grasp. So it also tells us something about the foundation and what we need to establish in the beginning. So even more so than education, I think we've all experienced those relationships that we've developed, that we've had. It was much easier to have a continuity with that. But new relations that we had to develop, new ways that we had to interact, it was much more difficult, and we had to find ways to sort of maneuver that in varied ways. So yeah.
So how do you see maybe as the community and networking? How will that evolve in your view in the future after the pandemic?
Yeah, I think Amy and Laura brought up really great points. I definitely agree with Laura that even though we've kind of mastered this like virtual event kind of thing, people are like craving to go back into person. As far as like community, I think that, you know, for community, there are definitely more people just like being very self-aware of, you know, who they are. You know, we've been, you know, educating ourselves on, you know, where we come from, learning more about what our community means, learning more about our cultural backgrounds, and understanding where we actually are from. And, you know, I definitely feel that it's definitely a direction or we're going in the right direction, because as we learn more, you know, and struggles, for example, I think that that will actually, there will be like a perception of our presence in society would be met with more context, more empathy, more compassion, rather than, you know, resentment or racism, right? In terms of networking, I definitely think that, you know, we're going to go back into in-person events. We just had our first in-person event a couple weeks ago, where we, like, you know, took everyone's temperature and everything like that. But I definitely craving to go back into virtual events, because there's really nothing like in-person events. There isn't that, like, you know, connection being made. I definitely feel the connection with you guys, but it's so much more special when I can, like, see you guys in person.
Agree.
That's for sure. So the time is kind of coming close. So I'm just going to give one last question about, you know, something everybody likes to hear. What advice would you give your younger self or your future self, Maggie? Yeah, take it away, Amy.
Oh, okay. My younger self, definitely. Recently, I've gotten to think more about habits and spiritualities, and I find that self-realization and visualization can be a very powerful tool to motivate a person and to improve the goals of your lives. And I've been learning a lot about that. And I think having time to spend time to visualize the success that you can have and make it a habit daily and write down your goals and having that conversation within your head and setting goals for yourself can turn those visualization into realities. So that's something that I've learned can be very powerful.
Great. Laura, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I feel like I'm constantly giving advice to students and to people. So I have like 6 things in my head that I want to say all at the same time. Maybe I would give the advice, you know, keep the main thing, right? And what I mean by that is, like, there's so much that's getting thrown at us. There's so many, and as we progress in our careers, as we do more and more, it only accumulates. And so if you think about what is the main thing that you care about, what is the main, and if you always center yourself with that, and you keep the main thing, it'll help you navigate all of the other stuff that comes along, all of the other details.
Definitely, and keeping it simple, definitely. Maggie, what about you?
Yeah, I think an advice I would give myself is to listen, but to not be overly influenced about what other people say. Especially when you're starting a business, a lot of people you with opinions, and you'll get pulled in a lot of different directions. And 99% of the time, people will tell you that there is a flaw in your business model, right? And that's like one of the things that we experienced when we were starting Nation Hustle Network. People said that we couldn't start a business from a Facebook group, and we, you know, got a lot of backlash from it, you know. And it's easy for people to point out those flaws, right, that they see, but you know yourself what it's like running the business day in and day out, and taking those experiences every day to determine, like, what is the best path for your business, right? And to just be yourself. I think the other thing that I would tell myself is to just be yourself, and that's really when you truly have the most fun, is when you're being true to who you are.
Definitely. Thank you, ladies. Oh, I love all the amazing stories and all the inspiration. I feel so inspired after talking with you, ladies, because definitely, like, during the whole last year, it's been, you know, sometimes it feels like such a lonely journey. So I'm glad, like, your stories, you know, really help us relate to each other, and kind of give us a bright outlook into the years and the months are, you know, going to return us back to normal. So, okay, so thank you for being part of our panel today. I think we turn it over to Queena, and we may have some time for some Q&A. Is there some, or do we do it at the table?
Yeah, I think I think we're going to head over to networking in a little bit, but just wanted to provide some closing remarks. You guys, so much love and support today. I don't know if people are seeing all the messages go up and down, but honestly, I feel like I take away more and more with each year's panel, and it really is such a privilege to be able to have you all here today. Again, just wanted to give a big thank you to all of our sponsors and our amazing panel of speakers, Maggie Chui, Asian Hustle Network, Laura Huang, Project Amplify. Hopefully you guys went and ordered her book during this event. Amy Nguyen, Aviva Pharmacy, and our amazing moderator, Nadia from Collectin. Thank you guys so much for being so honest and vulnerable today. I know that all of us will walk away with something, whether it be making a new friend, a newfound strength to persevere and overcome adversity, or even now just having a means to go out there and find your own edge. So this concludes the main portion of today's event, but I do have a couple quick announcements for you if you'd like to stick around for some networking. ABA has a few upcoming events in June. So June 9th at 1:30 p.m. is Regain Your Customers Through Digital Marketing. June 23rd at 1:30 p.m. is Selling Your Business and Knowing How Much Your Business is Worth. One of the highlights of today, outside of the main event, of course, is that for those of you who know who entered, we're raffling off an international round-trip Southwest ticket today. So if you tag your friends' names in our IG post a while back for the women's event, you were automatically entered into the contest to win this ticket. So we're going to be using a random name generator to announce the contest winner. So if we can get our Wheel of Fortune app on the screen, that would be great. And we're spinning. Oh my goodness, okay. And the lucky winner is Quasi Nerd, who we happen to know, our very own Angela Chang, part of the Women's Committee and actually on the board of directors as well. So congratulations, Angela. Please message V in the chat box to show that you're here, and she'll advise us how to redeem your prize. Okay, so now for some networking fun. Our awesome panel of featured speakers, they are so generous. They are going to be sticking around for a little bit so that you can get to know them a little bit better by visiting them at their tables. So at this time, we're going to go back to the main floor. You can actually join a table by double-clicking on that table. If you get lost or anything like that, there's also a help desk function, and we'll make sure that we get you to the right place. And then every 10 minutes, we're actually going to be automatically reshuffling people at the tables, so you'll get a warning sign that 10 minutes is coming up. Okay, so on behalf of ABA, a big thank you again for attending our 8th annual Women Business Pioneer Symposium. I hope you all had an amazing time, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.